One of the things I find on YouTube every now and then that always suckers me in is when other content creators in this hobby sphere take on a challenge. I'm sure you've seen a video like it yourself. One of those, can I paint this Warhammer army in 36 hours? You know, those kind of things. And they're always interesting. And there's a part of me that's like, I would love to do that. I would love to take like a week off work and like paint an ungodly amount of miniatures and see if I could do it. You know, I've done other things similar like that. But what I was not expecting was my son to give me a challenge to have basically a fire giant painted in time for his next leader day on his birthday so he could take it to preschool for show and share. He gave me about 30 days to do it. And did I get it finished? Let's talk about it. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Howard's Cave of Wonder. I'm Chris, aka Howard Blues, and welcome back to my cave. And if you're new to this channel, this is my my little vlog where I talk about all of the fun I'm having in the hobby world, whether it's painting miniatures, playing board games, you know, all that good stuff. And if I seem a little low energy, I am tired. Very tired, and I'm going to tell you why. So you may have seen I posted a video all about a challenge that my son issued. He painted a fire giant. It was a really cool thing, and I have to say, in case anybody wondered, because I didn't mention it in that video, I also painted it with my daughter. She painted a unicorn, also using kind of slap chop and such. You hear some pictures of it. If you're wondering, like, man, that's really black, it's because my daughter insisted on using all the colors and put so much paint on it that it's black instead of pink like she wanted. She's happy. That's all that matters. But anyway, my son painted a fire giant. He thought it was cool. When he found out I had one, he issued me this challenge of me painting mine in time for show and share, which was about, it wasn't quite 30 days at the time. It was really about 3 weeks, a little bit more. And that seemed doable. I got off to a bit of a slow start, had to fix the sword. It was bent. I sculpted a base for it, which he helped. You know, these were the kind of things, me and him were having fun with it. And I thought I was going to have plenty of time to do this. You know, it'd make for a couple of episodes of Howard's Cave of Wonder as I worked through the process. And then I got sick. And then I injured my back. And in fact, in the last video where I talked, you heard me talk about I had a bad back at the time. By the time that healed, I got sick again. So between, you know, the continuous plague of Papa Nurgle, a bad back, some poor sleep, and just my wife's work schedule, my time quickly dwindled down. And so I found myself with one weekend to try and paint one fire giant. Could be doable. Except Friday night my wife was working, so no painting time. Saturday, I got sick. So, well, that basically left me with 2 days, well, 3 days, 3 nights, whatever I had, and of which of those my wife was going to work 2 of them. So, really, we had, 2, 4, maybe 6 hours. And I'd already started a little bit. I knew I needed to get some stuff going and such, and so I had tackled painting the skin on the fire giant, and doing kind of all the grading on that, and not all the grading, all the blending, getting it a nice shade, getting all of the scars and such coated with orange. Really, I spent a good time kind of getting things into place and in a spot that I was ready to do more. And you might say, well, gosh, Howard, why wasn't that more of a video? I had intended to do something different with it. I hadn't... You might have said, Howard, why wasn't this a video in itself? This was because it was something where I had found myself with an extra evening to paint, and I had gone to get started. My podcast, or my kind of recording setup, was not kind of set up, and so it's I could waste time setting that up, or I could just use my Osmo, film that. I was like, oh, I could cover talking about it. All I'm really doing is getting some of the skin and such done, and that, I got a little bit done. It was just kind of a little bonus. I thought, you know what? Okay, I can skip. I can come back. I can recover that. And then, as I said, life got in the way, and so that's what you're seeing. But it was time. 6 hours. Can I paint this thing? The first thing I had to really figure out, though, what was the color scheme on this? Now, if it was my son, I would have painted it exactly like him. But I wanted to kind of stress that, this is Dad's miniature, and I want to do my own take on it. Although I was kind of inspired by some of his stuff, but I wanted to look at some other fire giant art. So I went to my D&D books, even Pathfinder, and I looked up fire giants. And boy, if you've never paid attention to fire giants, they have changed. From 3rd edition, they it was all right, to Pathfinder, where they look like a ball of flame. 4th edition looked awesome, and it is the version I will take my inspiration from with this paint job. And then there's 5th edition, and there they just... Listen, I don't like to criticize other people's art, because all art is subjective, and truthfully, I could not do 2D art in any way, shape, or form. I'm very much a 3D painter. But that 5th edition fire giant has got to be one of the derpiest looking fire giants. He looks like he got surprised. Instead of looking like the fierce fire giant who's like, how dare you, and made my kingdom or lair, it literally is like, oh hey. He's also got a weird, it's almost like he's Ganondorf's, the villain from the Legend of Zelda, kind of like his derpy older brother who's more of the jock, less of the mastermind. And I'm sorry, I know I'm taking on that art, but how do you go from this to this? Anyway, so 4th edition fire giants, where they looked awesome. That was where I took my inspiration from. And that meant doing some really interesting things, because trying to find color variation. So originally I had planned to match the way that my son did his skin and arms. He had, because he was using the slap chop style, he used Army Painter's Fire Giant Orange on some of the skin, and it kind of had this cool, this dark, and it had a very nice lava giant sort of feel to it. I liked it a lot, and I thought about going that route. But then as I kind of had thought about what I was going to do for other colors, it just felt like it was going to be too much orange. So I ended up taking in, because I had to finish the skin, I glazed that with more of a bluish gray, cooling it down. I wanted that contrast between the cold kind of blue-gray skin and what I would come to be all of the oranges and such on there. And then I started my next greatest challenge, which was the hair. And I knew I wanted to do fire hair. And fire, I've had a pretty good roll with. I'm not an airbrush painter, so getting those like really super smooth blends can be really tough and really challenging. But the way that I find the best is start with everything white. And you have to think about fire. And one of the biggest mistakes that people always do with fire is they always put it in the wrong order. They tend to put like the red down at the bottom, and then have it as you're going kind of up the flame, goes, from kind of that dark red to orange to yellow to white. And that's not how fire works. It's the reverse. The hottest part of the fire is white, and then it goes white, yellow, orange, red. And so I chose where I wanted it to be. Now, when painting miniatures, the face is a good focal point, is where you want to kind of draw people's attention to the miniature and the figure, because then you can hide some of the sins of elsewhere. So starting with white. And then what I like to do is I kind of like to block out my colors. I take my yellow, and I take actually a very pale yellow. I take kind of a nice bright orange and a nice bright red, and I block them out. So kind of by quarter isn't quite right. It is kind of like leave the thinnest, smallest bit for your white, then kind of take what's left and break it into thirds and go yellow, orange, red. Quickly kind of base that in. Then go in, when you go in to do your second coat, this is where I tend to wet blend it in. And I do that because when you kind of market that third out, what you're going to end up with is kind of that line. It's not going to be, again, fire is not like perfectly symmetrical. It's organic's not quite the right word, but it's a flowing thing. And so you have to do that. I wanted to wet blend. And so in some places I have less yellow, more orange, some of that orange going further into the red, more red. You just kind of place it out, but you just kind of work on wet blending it in. And then once I kind of have that, what you'll find is that kind of that pale yellow and that orange will kind of make kind of a peachy orange, almost not quite as peach as this, but kind of actually, kind of a peachy orange. Once I kind of have that in place, then I will go in and I will use a nice thin, very thin, almost a glaze coat of kind of a stronger pigmented yellow and red, and I will take and bring that and kind of glaze. And again, when glazing with that stronger pigment yellow, I want to go from yellow, kind of again leave some of that light yellow, but kind of try and cover some of that then creamy orange, and just you kind of have to work it back and forth, and then you get a feel for it. And I felt pretty good with where it turned up. So I got that done. I started in on the next part was the cloak. And the cloak has these kind of cool bone protrusions that are sticking out from it. And to me, I'm like, this is clearly bone. This is some monstrous beast. This thing has taken that bone and has literally taken it and made it into armor. It's kind of a cool bone armor. And so that was kind of the feeling. I challenged myself a little bit more on this one and tried to blend it up. A lot of times when I've done bone in the past, when I've done skeletons, I've done a lot of the, paint it kind of an off-white, hit it with a brown or bluish wash, dry brush it back to the original, done. Kind of I'm not going to say the lazy way, but just the easy way. So here I literally tried to blend my way up and to try to add in a little texture and things like that to it. I then found a nice dark metal. Kind of had to shift it a little bit to find the one that worked, and I kind of base played a lot of what I thought would be silver. Coming back into it the next night as I felt a little worse, again, I was putting on the glaze onto my bone, which turned out well. I took and worked on the cloak, and I actually had a conversation with my wife about the cloak. My son wanted it to be peach because he did a peach cloak. I wasn't sold on that, but I didn't know what color I wanted to do. Again, I wanted to avoid the oranges and reds because I already felt like this model had a lot of orange and red on it. So what could I do? What else could I put on it? Talking with her, she gave me an idea. She liked the dry brushed look that I had dry brushed some white onto the most of the miniature to help pick out details and such. And she liked how that looked and all the detail on it. So she suggested, kind of using a purplish red and keeping it thin so I didn't lose the detail. I tried that. I thinned my paint down too much, and it came out pink. Right, pink. And so that was not going to work. So I let that sit overnight, came back, and hit the drawing board and had a really good idea. There are some people who've been experimenting with the double slap chop. So taking something that you've painted using the slap chop style, so the dry brush, the black, dry brush white, speed paint, but then doing that again, except you just dry brush over a speed paint thing, and then you put a second coat. And it's supposed to kind of work. I thought, well, let's give it a try. So I used a dark red speed paint for the first coat, did my second dry brush, and then I went in with an orange. I actually used Fire Giant orange on it to try and maybe see would this maybe apply some gradient and such. And it worked out pretty well. And one of the pieces, because I wanted to keep some inspiration from my son's thing. He has this kind of loincloth tabard sort of thing hanging down. My son calls it underwear because it's underwear. I knew I kind of wanted to do that red scale because of, again, 4th edition artwork. Red scale seemed like it would fit. I'm not gonna lie, I speed painted that, or used speed paint on that just to get it done because it's mostly in shadow, and I'm on a timeline. And I also used some speed paint on the inside of his cloak just to kind of have some leather. Again, these are background elements. They're not the main focus of what I was trying to get done. There were some failures. I went through like 2, maybe 3 different gold colors on the trim, just because I was kind of changing my mind on what I wanted to do with it, and which ended up being kind of funny because I looking at it now as I hold it here. I don't want to spoil it yet, but I definitely have some shin guards that are not quite the same color. I'm gonna have to figure out how I fix that on here. It's just trying to experiment with the gold and trying not to do too much and finding the right kind. So again, trying to find that variation, but also to make it fit. The shield was another thing. I started off with this kind of purple metallic. I kind of liked it, but I wanted to work in some green for my son because green is his favorite color. So I switched. I painted over it. Painted it this green Reaper green titanium. That was too light. So then I used some dark green speed paint that I'd used for one gem that was on this Fire Giant because I felt like he needed one green gem. I don't know why. So then I did that on half the shield, and I liked how it turned out. It came out as this kind of cool green, but then it was like this really nice strong green next to this really kind of weak green. So I went back and I added the purple back in. I painted this shield like 3-4 times. It was some failure. But I did get some highlighting and such done, and I tried to use a skill, or at least a technique called shaded metallics. It's kind of where you paint it the one metallic, your base metallic color, and it's a shade mix that you make out of using Reaper paints. It's a gloss varnish, blue liner, brown liner, a little bit of black, a little bit of black. And then the original metallic color to keep that, and you apply it like a wash, and it kind of fills in the crevices, and it kind of leaves a residue, so it kind of looks like nice dirty metal, but it's not. It works pretty well. I think my metal was originally too dark, so when I did the shaded metallics, it didn't work quite as well. It came out okay. I'm not complaining. As I started to run low on time, there were just some things that I had to struggle and push through. His gauntlets are not perfect, and I probably, well, we'll come back to that. The last kind of big challenge that I had was his sword, and the sword was a huge challenge because I wanted it to be something special. I didn't want it because I didn't want it just to be a big metal sword. There's a lot of metal on this guy, and so I wanted to do something different. And so I had this crazy idea for a lava sword, and I did it the same way I did rust, actually. So I started by base coating the whole thing in white, and it has some runes in the middle of it, and I just wanted to kind of hit those runes with some white. I just wanted that kind of white color to kind of be, again, fire, white's the hottest. So I wanted that at least in the rune lettering, such. I then went in with my pale yellow, and I brushed pretty much the whole sword, leaving some areas white, especially kind of in the middle, because again, I wanted it to be like it's glowing on the inside. I then took my strong yellow pigment, and I just took a bbit of blister foam, and I sponge painted on my strong yellow, my strong orange, a light red, a dark red, kind of just sponge painting and splashing it all over. I wanted color variation. Normally when I do this with rust, it's you kind of paint it a really dark brown, and then you tend to sponge on a lighter brown, a orange, a rusty red, and then a yellow, like as the fine, like a strong yellow. And then what you do is then you go back in and you dry brush it, and you dry brush a metallic on it. And because that dry brush is going to catch edges, and it's going to fill in some of the flat spots, especially if you leave it just a little bit more than like a little bit more paint on the brush than not. You'll do that, and it will it makes for some nice rust. I usually will then follow it up with kind of that shaded metallic squash that I mentioned before to kind of help smooth out that transition. And here, my dry brush was actually black, and because I wanted it to basically look like he had, like it's lava, but it's like cooling and hardening. So it's like his sword is hot, but it's cooling as you go further from it. And because you do it as the dry brush, it's kind of the edges and the points, allowing the imperfections in the sword, the divots and spots where the sword has clearly struck metal and left kind of, not dense, not the right word, neither is impression, but you get the idea. And the cracks, it allows that lava to look like it's going, so it's like his sword is kind of breaking up from the lava. It's just kind of a cool effect. It was a little dull when I finished, and so I actually used some blazing orange ink from P3 and just kind of glazed it to kind of help bring the vibrancy back up, and it worked pretty well. So I did 2 hours the first night, 2 hours the second night, and then the third night I went a bit crazy, and I did 3 hours. I stayed up till midnight to finish, or at least to get it to a level that I thought my son could present it. And so here we go. And here he is. Is he done? No. At least not by my standard. There is still things I want to do. I want to take and on places in his armor, you can see, just as I hold it there, you can see that little kind of like splash across his armor, that damage. I want to take and again, anybody who knows painting major, I want to just take and hit that with a little bit of a sharper silver to make it look like it's gleaming, hit a few edge highlights here and there. His shield has some similar marks as I kind of turn it. You can see in the light. I need to hit up those. Because my son took it to preschool, he's taken some dents and dings in some of the paint job. His hair, if I bring it up, it's not looking quite as vibrant. So it's a little touch up here and there. It's got a little tear. I mentioned, and you can kind of see it. This one is a much nicer oranger color from where I did a wash over the metal. I missed this inner, in my tiredness, I missed this inner edge on there, so it's more of a dull. But overall, I would say he's about 96% of the way there. He needs those finishing touches, those things that are just going to give it that last pop. The base, I did not a lot. I did a little bit of kind of the same thing that I did with the sword on the lava, and I did that just to try and make it again look like it's that lava oozing out. And I'm pretty happy with that. Came up, but I want to fix up the dirt a little bit, paint some of the lava behind. So overall, I'm happy with where he's at. And you know what? For like a tabletop quality, if you slap this guy on the table, it's gonna look fine. If I need him for a D&D session, he's good to go. But I know there's more I can do. He's got all these rivets here that I want to just take and, add a little bit more, bring up the luminosity, just those finer touches. So nearly done. About 95%, as I said. But overall, I'm really happy. Did I make my goal? Yeah, my son was able to take it. He was pretty happy with it. I'm pretty happy that he got to take it. But is he done officially? No. So some work to be done there. Although, help me settle this debate. I'm holding mine up here. I'll put up a picture of my son's, because my son and I were debating at the dinner table tonight who has the cooler fire giant. Now I know he's now 5, but he painted it when he's 4. So 4-year-old versus his old man. Who did cooler? And I'm probably going to lose because, who can say no to a cute kid? So, anyway, that summarizes my painting challenge. And sorry it wasn't as much of a vlog style. I just knew I could not keep up here's what I'm doing step by step. And so I chose to keep, to the best of my ability, the promise I had made my son over the content. But hopefully you still got something out of this. And hey, if there's something you saw during the little time lapses that I put up showing the painting spree, if you want to know, like, hey, what were you doing right there, Howard? Let me know. Shoot a comment or put the let me know. Feel free to make a comment, put a time code, but ask. I will treasure. And hey, tune back in. I will probably make another video where I do the finishing kind of touches and wrap up this fire giant so I can get back to other projects. That's right. Don't look up at the shelf of shame. The red gobos. I will get back to the red gobos. I promise I will finish the red gobos before next Christmas. Okay, it'll happen. I promise. So with that, if you've made it this far, thank you for sticking with and tuning in. Hopefully you'll check out a few more of the videos, and maybe if you're feeling kind and generous, you'll hit that subscribe button. I feel like I have to say that because I'm trying to grow this channel, but I would appreciate if you do, and if not, that's okay too. But hopefully, the thing that's most important is that we catch you all back down here in the cave next time. Good night, everybody.